Have you ever wondered what would happen when a former media executive trades corporate strategy for interior design, only to discover that the same rules apply? It's funny because you've heard on this show so many designers and architects from different industries who made their way to design. And most will say the same thing, like the rules don't change. It's just how you apply them. In a rapidly evolving industry shaped now by AI, rising client expectations, and economic pressure, design has become as much about systems as it is about style. This conversation you're about to hear today with Christina Cruz reveals how one designer is navigating that shift by treating every project like a campaign with outcomes that extend far beyond aesthetics. A conversation about reinvention, material IQ, and why the most effective designers today think in terms of ROI, storytelling, and client experience. What is a return on investment? What is the story you're trying to tell? And how will the user experience be revealed? Not just immediately, but over time. You will also hear an exploration, the intersection of creativity and commerce through the lens of a designer who entered the field from a high-level media sales background. And as somebody who did that for 20 years, I can tell you what you're about to hear certainly resonated with me. And it's so important. And as a designer, if you never had that experience, what began for her as a personal creative outlet quickly evolved into a full-scale practice shaped by client service, strategic thinking, and an understanding of how to build and communicate value. And gosh, that is one of the most important things that we are talking about in the industry today. The conversation moves from career transition to the realities of running a design firm in a post-pandemic environment where expectations have shifted dramatically. The rise of AI-driven tools, the normalization of photorealistic rendering, and the increasing demand for certainty have fundamentally altered the creative process. At the same time, economic pressure and market saturation are forcing designers to rethink how they position their services and allocate resources. At its core, what you're going to hear today, this conversation reframes interior design as a business discipline, one rooted in storytelling, measurable outcomes, and deeply personalized client experiences. From passion to practice, design is a business model. The expectation economy, storytelling is strategy, material IQ, marketing in a saturated landscape, AI and authenticity, rethinking ROI. There's a ton here, and you're going to hear it all with Christina right after this. At the highest level of design, the absolute best specifying designers, architects, landscape designers are all highly focused on the technology and performance of products and materials today. You have to, because the products you specify for your projects have to perform and they have to last. That's one of the reasons why I am so proud to be working with TimberTech. Their focus on the technical renaissance of synthetic decking is literally changing the conversation about innovation and performance. It pulls focus on three priorities homeowners have and expect from the products their designers and architects specify for their luxury projects. 1, aesthetics must match the overall design and fit visually. 2, durability and maintenance. I've told you about my board flipping stories from my own wood decks. Clients not only want beauty, but they want ease of use, and they want it to last for decades. 3, sustainably made. Clients are more conscious of the environment now, and they want the same of their materials. TimberTech hits each one of these elements with a product that not only meets expectations, they exceed them. TimberTech makes a synthetic decking that looks just like wood, color and embossed wood grain for a natural appearance. Their composite decking is technologically superior, as it has been created to last for decades, and it's manufactured with up to 85% recycled material. Their advanced PVC, vintage, and landmark collections have a Class A flame spread rating, making these products an amazing choice for wildfire-prone areas, which unfortunately continues to grow on the risk map. Check the show notes for more information about this and to find the nearest showroom or lumberyard where you can find TimberTech, or you can check them out directly, timbertech.com. And it's funny that you actually bring that up, that I get to do this and talk about design and architecture without having to do all the minutia and all the hassle that goes along with it. And it's interesting too, has design become more complicated for you in the last, let's call it 6 years?
Well, the interesting thing about me is I started my design business 5 years ago. And
Hmm.
so I had a previous life for 17 years. I was a sales executive
For
and
whom? For
for
what industry?
media sales. So I worked for Yahoo, BuzzFeed, Tumblr, like all of the
Okay. Okay.
big social conglomerates. But so my focus was very much sales and client service. And I never really found my passion. I was really good at my job. I was like, high paying sales executive and was about to go into like management and that next level of my career. And I was like, okay, I'm good at this, but this can't be it. And I was like searching for my passion, and through moving from LA to Austin, and renovating my home in LA and renovating my home in Austin, it was that aha moment. So what I can say is that when I first moved to Austin, because Austin was a little bit more of a smaller city and that was growing and really booming during the COVID times. And everybody from bigger cities were flocking to, these smaller, like cool little towns like Austin. When I first got here, the design was nowhere near where it is today. And I think because of the access to social, the access to more content being created about behind the scenes of like how things are getting built and how things are getting made, more people desire those type of designs. So it was really hard finding contractors that just introducing myself to the design scene. They weren't at the level that what I was used to in Los Angeles of like having the knowledge of like different design elements and how to create different types of things. And so that was an interesting take. And now they've come so far so fast that everyone now is like in the know of like kind of like the design trends or what people are wanting, using natural stone, really cool profile edges, like things like that. So I think it's come a long way just in the short amount of time I've been in design. So.
So you made the switch relatively recently. So, and the reason I ask about how it has become more complicated in the last 6 years is really because that's when the pandemic started. And in design, it doesn't feel like there has been a single moment when things haven't gotten more complicated for a litany of reasons that range from the pandemic to supply chain to political to, I mean, you name it. But
Yes, yeah.
so you and I share an interesting part of our background too. So when I started in broadcast,
Okay.
I started on the sales side.
Yes.
And
Okay.
I did
Very
the media
similar.
sales. I did the media sales. I did the management. Um, Absolutely hated it. And I think and I think what I hated about it was that it was
Hmm.
such a grind. And I compare that and contrast it with interior design because there was a time in the not so distant past where design really was more of a creative endeavor
Hmm.
than a tactical business endeavor. And I think that that's changed. Have you noticed that change in the 5 short years since you've been doing this?
I think so, especially, kicking off designing for myself, it was, a passion. It was for fun, and it was like that creative play. And I think now it's moved into, now being a business owner and having my own firm. I think it came naturally to me to like kind of take on that business mindset just because I'd come from a corporate background. But what I have noticed is that literally the creative part of our industry is probably 20%, and 80% of that is business, it's client service, it's spreadsheets, numbers, quotes. It's just a lot of behind the scenes computer, software, drawing, things like that. Renders now, people, you cannot provide a design without having a 3D render. Like it's just now, even more so now. I mean, maybe like 3 years ago, you can, they were expensive to create and you kind of gave your clients an option. But now with AI, it's like unacceptable to like not provide your mood board and then also have a 3D render with that, because the level of expectation with clients now is just at a different level. So it's just a lot of computer work. And I think a lot of the creativity gets taken out of it because they want to make sure that at the end of the day, what they see in the 3D render is going to look exactly what you're going to get in real life at the end of the project. And it doesn't always look like that. It's like, here's like a render to give you kind of an idea. But I think people just are so focused on the certainty now of like, I want to know exactly what it wants to look like. And I think a little bit of that, the creativity gets taken away, right? It's like, trust us, we might have to make a tweak midway through, and that could have been the best tweak we made because it completely changed the look and vibe and the feel. But there's no longer that. It's like what you show at the beginning, 3 to 6 months later, it needs to look like that. If it doesn't, then you have some explaining to do. So I think it's
Well,
shifted in that regard.
and it's interesting too because there was a time when, and not so long ago, when you could hire a client could hire an interior designer to come in, and it was relatively affordable to change the vibe, to change the mood, to change the style, to get a refresh. It has become so complex now and so
Mm-hmm.
expensive now that I think most clients in that mid-range who would hire designers to come in and maybe do a living room or a single room for a refresh or a redesign are doing it themselves because of
Mm-hmm.
AI and because of other tools, and leaving the more complicated and complex to the designers. But I want to back up a second because you both changed careers, remodeled two homes, and moved from Los Angeles to Texas to Austin. All the while you're creating your design firm. So I want you to walk me through that because that is so many different levels of complexity, and
Yeah.
still trying to, I would imagine, craft your not your personal design style, because ultimately at the end of the day that doesn't really matter, but crafting your aesthetic and your philosophy so that
Mm-hmm.
you do the best you can for your clients. How did you do everything all at once, and would you do it again?
So that's a great question because, again, when I started designing, it was just for me, my family, my home, our, forever home in Austin as we moved with our, 3 kids. And I grew up around design. My father dabbled in interior design. So we were always on job sites looking at fabric. He always had this beautiful arrangement that he would create every Friday for our home. And it's funny because my mom, she was an entrepreneur and a business owner, and she had her own creative outlet doing gift baskets. But she was not into design. She left that up to my dad. So we were around that a lot, but I didn't realize until I was doing my own home how much I loved it. And I was almost, bummed that I didn't get to lean in more when my dad was alive because he passed away. And it wasn't until after he passed away that I really got into it. But I felt so connected with him through that process that I was like, okay, I feel connected with him in a way that I'd never felt my entire life with him. And so I really, leaned in, and I still worked my corporate job for a year and a half. And when I got to Austin, I remember telling my husband, I want to reinvent myself while I'm here. My identity has been so tied into sales and being an executive and working for Microsoft and Yahoo and all these big companies that, and climbing that corporate ladder. I want to reinvent myself with something really creative. And so if I could just get one client I would be the happiest person ever. So I could just continue to work on like these little projects as a passion. And then one project turned into 20 that year. And so I was still working design nights and weekends, and then during the day, like my corporate job. And finally, I was like, okay, I think I can test this out on my own and see where it goes. And, that's kind of how things snowball. But you're right in the sense of like creating my design style and like what I wanted my firm to represent and stand for. And I think, soulful, timeless. I'm really drawn to vintage design and aesthetic and really kind of having that old world feel. Those elements of patina that they're not perfectly, fresh out of the box, but it has like that worn, lived in feel to really create that warmth in a home. I was very drawn to that. And being here, like being from El Paso, everything is a little bit worn. It's a border town. Nothing is really like fresh and new there. It's starting to get a little bit built out a lot more than it was when I grew up, but it just had this very rustic feeling, like, very Southwest town. And I loved coming to Austin and having that. Whereas LA was a little bit different. Everything was like kind of fresh and new and crisp and clean. And you have a different vibe over there. So coming here, I really wanted my style in my own personal home to have that worn in patina feel.
How did your media background help you craft your firm?
I would say being trained in client service is probably at the forefront of our design firm. The whole idea of like unreasonable hospitality, the client is always right. I mean, when I was in my corporate job, I was working with, the top, Fortune 100 movie studios. Like that was my book of business. So these really high profile executives that were, putting out these blockbuster movies. And my job was to get their ads on our website in a really cool, creative way. So I was already in a creative field from a sales perspective, but then having that client service and really making sure that they feel seen and heard, and then creating a story around the ideas that we were sharing. And I really implemented that same philosophy into design because we're creating a story for their family, a sanctuary of how they want to live, creating a space in how they're going to evolve as a person. I'm a big believer in like your surroundings are basically a tipping point, a catalyst to how you're evolving in life. If you have a space that's really creative, if you're creating a dining room that's fostering connection, that immediately starts to change the way you think, feel, and live, and how you want other people that come into your home to experience that. And all of that is through that storytelling that I think came from my corporate life.
So do you, when you're onboarding clients to the point where you get a contract and you start working with them, are you thinking about them in terms of and their project in terms of like a campaign? You know how you'll go to the studio, you'll talk to them about whatever the next release is, and then you start thinking about how can we use the assets to create a campaign to attach KPI and build something out that will achieve demonstrable results. Is that the way you think about your projects?
In a sense, yes, because we're always thinking about what do they stand for, and that's the same as a movie studio. It's like, what do we want this film to stand for? How do we want the audience to connect? Same thing with my clients is like, what do you want to tell in this home? Like, what chapter of life are you in? Sometimes it's like someone's forever home. Sometimes it's like, okay, my kids are all out of the house and I've never really had nice furniture. And this is our time for me and my husband to like create what we want. And then a place where our kids want to come still visit us, even though they're out of the home. So it always starts with what is your story? How do you want us to tell your story? And what are the most important elements in how you're functioning through your home every day? Is there a certain room that gets light where that's where you want to do, your morning readings, or you really love cooking for your family? So we need to create, a incredible kitchen, and then we need to have a secondary oven in the butler's pantry. So we need to start creating these spaces so that you're living your fullest life in this space that we're helping you create. From there, we're going to get the end result and making sure that it's achieving, ROI, it's achieving all the KPIs that we have put in place. to make sure that at the end of the day, it was like a smash hit and we're ready for the next one, which, maybe it's a next project, maybe it's a referral that you're recommending to your neighbor. Like, Christina helped us create this kitchen, and right now we're creating a kitchen, and her husband are starting a new business model where they're teaching, creating content and teaching people how to cook online and the art of entertaining, which I think is such a cool concept. But we had to really create a space where they're evolving into that next chapter in their life. So it's always starting kind of with what the story is, and what do you want that end result to be, which is the fun part, because I know that at the end of the day, I'm helping create this story in their next chapter of their, very long life. And if we could just have a little part of that to help them get to that next level and be the best version of themselves, it's such an honor for us, really.
What's interesting and fascinating about that is most designers that we would speak to, there's no the project ends when the project is over. And what I think is so fascinating about it, and why I'm appreciative for the opportunity to have this conversation, is there should be more conversation after the design is done. There should be predetermined KPI. There should be premature. When clients think of ROI now, the standard is ROI is what you get when you sell the property.
Mm-hmm.
That's your return on investment. Did you recoup the cost of design by bettering your home? And I would argue that that's not a return on investment at all. If you lived in it and it made your life better, that was your return on investment.
Yes.
If you establish bona fide actual KPI, key performance indicators, they don't teach that in design school, which is why, design school, architecture different. Design school is one of those things I'm not quite sure what purpose, and I know I will get emails. Don't send me emails. Just hear me out. I'm not sure what a degree from a design education actually does, except teaches the basics of art history and scale and whatever. The basics, I get it. When you're working with a client, are you going in with a CNA client needs analysis the same way you did when you were in media? And how do you think that background has helped you with your clients draw out that actual need versus stated need?
Yeah, I think, well, we definitely introduce when we're, connecting with people and we get signed onto a project. We always start off with a questionnaire. It's like, what are your needs, for the home? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Um, Down to, what are you putting in your nightstand? What are those personal things? Do you just want to reduce clutter and have just end tables? Or do you need something with drawers? Do you want something to stack books? Like, we get very in the weeds of what people need. And I think, I didn't go to design school myself. It was, more of like the school of life where when I decided to do this full time, I partnered with these incredible mentors that my firm couldn't be where I was today without these key people in my life that really took me under their wing. And they really went in hard with me in terms of training, from construction to business, designers that kind of, brought me from A to Z, color specialists. I basically went out and did my own schooling. But I will say, like, as a leader in a design firm, we really only hire people that do go to design school, because I think the software is key. Having just so you don't get those emails. We definitely only hire people that go to design school, because what they're teaching from like a software standpoint, it's like you can't really partner with contractors anymore by giving them a photo, which you could have done that 6 years ago and been like, hey guys, I want my kitchen to look like this, and I'll go to the countertop store and pick some, stuff and a faucet. If you do that, there's just so many problems that unfold. I mean, we've seen it when we go in to help people renovate, and we've seen, like, or heard horror stories from our clients who are like, oh, we worked with a contractor and we just showed them a picture. It's like you do need proper plans and documentation and things like that. But I think the business side is not really taught well in design school. It's like you can have an incredible, talented designer that went through school and then they come out and they don't really know like the business side of things. And I feel like that's really missing in design is like all the things that come with running a business from marketing to social to design to bookkeeping, like just all these things that I've also had to learn on the fly because working in corporate, it's so nice. You come in and you have your time off and you do your job and you leave at a certain time and you can shut it off. Like when you have your own business, you're on vacation, you're emailing. When you're hiking with your family, you're thinking about oh, did I tell the contractor XYZ? It's like it never shuts off. And so, that's something I'm working on. But I think, yeah, it's just very different now with what you need to know in all aspects for with a design firm.
I think every designer who goes to design school should have to do an internship, not have to, but should do an internship in another industry.
It probably would be helpful. I mean, I think literally every industry has something to offer because I've met so many designers that have come from a different background. I mean, I met a designer the other day, she was a pharmacist. And it was so interesting to see like how her brain works and her schooling for pharmacy school, and then how she kind of brought that into design. And same thing with like, I've met a couple lawyers that, ended their very prestigious law career and then they decided to like change into design, but the way that they are very decisive and meticulous about their designs and it's a different style and a different way thing that you're bringing to the table for your clients, which I think is so fascinating to bring a little piece. But even if you're working in retail and that was your previous job before you like landed in design, whatever you learned in that um, line of work, you're going to bring in a certain aspect to design, I would say.
So, talk to me about material intelligence and how, in the years that you've been doing this, and I get familial background, but how do you familiarize yourself with so much product and so many changes in what's available now? I mean, everything from synthetic material to what's available now in tech and lighting, the materiality of it and the availability of it and how you specify. How do you go to the shows? How do you find new product?
So there's a couple different ways. I mean, being, fairly new to the industry, I feel like I'm constantly learning. I'm very curious and I task my team with that a lot too, is like stay curious because that's the only way that you're going to be on top. There's so many new materials and for example, countertops, like there's so many different materials that are coming out now that are man-made and porcelain this and quartz that. And we love natural stone and we will always love natural stone, but it's like, okay, how can we elevate our knowledge on that? We met a company that is now making natural stone that's 5 millimeters thick, which is basically paper thin, looks like veneer. You can curve it on tables and you can make these incredible pieces with real stone. And just really digging in and leveling it up. We just met a vendor the other day who's now working with liquid metal. So now you can take any piece of wood and clad it in brass or metal. And it's basically a liquid paint that turns into metal, any finish that you want. That's a game changer because now we can do these incredible pieces, shapes where if you wanted like a completely curved hood in your kitchen, all wrapped in brass, that would be tens of thousands of dollars. And now it's something that's a little bit more doable because you have this new material that's liquid metal. So it's, the shows, it's staying on top of things. I mean, Instagram, love it or hate it, it's like an incredible resource and knowing what's out there and what's like on top of like the trends that are coming out and new products that are coming out. But I think also just staying really curious and really making the time. I mean, we have no time. Every minute is accounted for with design because there's just so many different things going on. And I think carving out the time to stay curious and get out from the computer and go to a vendor's workroom and really see how they're playing with materials or getting insight into their process is really how I've been able to like really learn and grow as just a designer and push my team to grow, because it's so easy to be behind your computer and like send an email or ask someone, hey, we're looking for XYZ, can you send us fabrics of what you think? It's like, no, get out of your computer, go to the location, pull yourself so you can start to get familiar with other things, or maybe something will come across that you never thought to put in the design and it's just really unique. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like staying curious so that all these new elements that are coming up, you can kind of stay on top of it.
You are listening to my conversation with designer Christina Cruz. We'll be right back. If you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've heard me say this, that the most important word in the design industry is service. Product is important, price is important, selection is important, but stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of a project, any project. How design professionals like you demand great service and your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commission sales professionals. It's really important. It means that their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales, Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of experience in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. Now, you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy gift cards, e-gift cards, or 2.5% in rewards checks for every qualified and delivered sale. In addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more than I could possibly tell you about here. And the cherry on top is access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service, again, from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific Sales expert at a showroom today for full details and to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. The design industry is in the midst of a generational and fundamental change. If you're in the biz, you feel it. I know you do. We all do. Just about every aspect of the industry is growing, changing, and turning into something entirely different due to a number of factors that, not to go into here, but between tariffs and supply chain and political influence, just clients have changed. Pricing has changed. Everything about the industry has changed, except for one thing: the need for strong design and architecture communities. And that's what led to the creation of Shelter Republic, an online community exclusively for the design and architecture communities, a place to engage with other like-minded creatives outside of the prying eyes of clients and the media. Wouldn't you like to belong to a nurturing community where you can have those real, challenging, authentic conversations, watch exclusive design-focused content, take free courses to level up your design business, hear from experts in the industry, guiding you and helping you move ever forward? And it's free to join. No catch, but it's invitation only. This is not like maybe some other programs you've heard of before where you pay a fee, a sizable fee, and go through a quasi-vetting process only to get there and realize that you're kind of just paying for an ad. That is not what this is. If you're a designer or an architect, you qualify. If you want in, email convobydesign@outlook.com and type Shelter Republic in the subject line. That's it. An invitation to join will follow. Call this the anti-social media platform where you can meet, engage, and share ideas in a safe, closed community environment of like-minded creatives. That's what this is. And like I said, it's free to join. Send an email, confobydesign@outlook.com. Subject line is Shelter Republic. It's that simple. And like I said, it's free to join. See you there. What are the must attend shows for you? Which ones have you attended in the last year? And how do you navigate? Because when you go to a KBIS, maybe,
Mhm.
yeah, it's great. If it's in Orlando, it's in Vegas, either one, it's a great location, but you're not there to really recreate. You're there to work. So
Yeah.
you have to take that time. You have to make that time. Which shows are you going to? Which ones are on your radar? Which ones are on your calendar?
Yeah, I like the KBIS show. I think there's a lot of new, incredible vendors that are there and really kind of leveling up, showing you what they can do. And it's nice because a lot of times the showrooms that are in your local area don't have those elements. So those are great. We took a break from High Point just because I feel like you don't need to go every year, but it is nice every couple of years to go and kind of see what all the new vendors are, see what's coming out, all the new fabrics, all the new technology that's coming out with furnishing. So we're going to High Point this year. And one show that has really grown, and I don't know if this is on your radar at all, but the Round Top Antique Show is something that we never miss. And we go, it's so close to Austin. It's right outside of Austin, an hour and a half away. But every single time I leave from there, I am like completely inspired. I feel like my spark is always rekindled. Like if you feel depleted and burnt out, it always gets reinvigorated there because not only is there like incredible antiques, but then now it's gotten so popular that you have Monogram, Brizo, Jen Air, you have these huge companies that are doing pop-ups. And you have these incredible designers that are buying homes and renovating these homes with partners like, a Brizo, a Monogram, and they're showing their latest and greatest in these homes, and they're inviting you in so you can kind of see all these things. And it's just really, you can see it in real time versus like when you're going to a KBIS, it's more of kind of a vendor booth and you're kind of hearing about it and it's more trade show like. But when you're in a real time experience like around top, it hits a little bit different because you're like, okay, I'm seeing this in a home. We're working on these 3 projects. I see how I can implement this, or like, oh, they should have done that. Maybe we can do XYZ. And it's just really cool to see how all these vendors are like using different products in a really unique way.
It's funny you mentioned Round Top. Round Top is one of those because I'm based in Tulsa. So Round
Mm.
Top is one of those that has been on my radar for literally 10 years.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
have never, living in LA and now in Tulsa, but I've never had the opportunity because of the timing.
Hmm.
But Round Top is one of those really interesting. So I lived when I was in radio, I was in Dallas,
Oh, okay.
mid 90s into the
Yeah.
2000s. And I remember when I moved from LA to Texas, going to yard sales and going to swap meets and being able to find some really cool stuff
Hmm.
cheap
Yes.
was amazing.
Uh,
Texas has been pretty much picked clean.
yeah.
It's picked clean. I mean, you're not going to find anyone that doesn't know what their stuff is worth.
Yeah.
At least in Texas. So Round Top went from, being able to find inexpensive antiques at the Big Red Barn to
Yeah.
it really is a regional happening.
Oh, it's insane. And I've been going for only 6 years. Some people have been going for, 20.
Yeah.
And my experience has shifted dramatically from 6 years ago because when I went, I first got into design. I'm like, what is this show? I was getting my whole house was like filled with brown top stuff because it was these incredible deals and these one of ones that were just amazing finds. And now you go and it's gotten so popular where you're having these huge pop ups from like really big fashion brands to huge, Lulu in Georgia hosts like a really big dinner there every year. Like it's just now a very much a very important place for brands and designers to go and really kind of look at different product. And with that comes like, the cost increases and, then layer in tariffs where you have these like sweet vendors that, work so hard all year. And the two show, so Round Top is twice a year. there's a mini show in January, which is, but I don't really consider that, two of their main shows is in the fall and the spring. And these vendors work incredibly hard all year to like curate and find these amazing pieces. And then, half of them, when I was speaking to them, you get to know them and you get to know their story, and they're just so sweet. And half of their containers are stuck in tariffs. When they do get the containers, like the tariffs, everything is more expensive. So then the product is more expensive. And, as a designer, you're like, oh, it's really hard to like show my client this $10,000 chair over text and be like, you want to buy this? It would be perfect. And it just doesn't hit the same versus like, oh my gosh, this chair that we saw on First Dibs, I found it here at Round Top. We have to get it. It's like the perfect piece to like finish off your space. That part is a little disheartening, but you can still find some deals. Like they have the whole tent section, and you can still find stuff. And honestly, like a lot of the prices are the same price as what you would buy for something online. And I would rather get a one of one that is like vintage, and the way that they make the furniture, like back in the day, that's hundreds of years old or 50 to 60 years old, is so different than how the furniture is being made today. So even then it's like you're scoring because the way that they make it and how like the joinery fits in versus now everything's like glued together and like nailed together. It's just not the same. So you can feel good about that even if you're paying high dollar.
When you started your firm, did your marketing background help you launch and attract customers right away, or did it still take some time?
I think it helped right away. I think also it was in that sweet spot where everyone was stuck at home and they wanted to redo something in their place, and that's when a lot of like interior designers were born in that time frame. And now we're over that hump and we're kind of on the decline where people are being a little bit more careful with their money with the way the economy is right now. But then you have an influx of designers. Not a lot of people are really investing in their home right now because they're unsure about where the economy is going with gas prices, tariffs, like all the things. So it's a very interesting time, especially for the influx of designers. So you have these like very well established firms that have been doing it for years, and they're working with the architects and builders. And then you have like that new suite of designers where it's like, you were established. COVID kind of brought you up and established through all the needs and demand of construction that was happening at the time. And then you have the new designers where it's like they might be priced a little lower because they're getting into things. So it's very competitive right now in terms of like landing the job because clients have so much leeway in kind of which direction they want to go, especially with how they're spending their money. So I think it's an interesting time right now for a lot of design firms.
How does that affect the manner in which you market?
So how we're starting to market now is we're trying, we're a lot of times in these type of declines, you're seeing a lot of firms like they'll lower their prices or they'll like do concessions for clients. I think we're kind of really holding firm on, we design a certain way, we have a certain aesthetic, we design for the client. So if you look at our portfolio, it all looks different. But I would definitely say that we love kind of bespoke, like custom. We use a lot of natural materials, and that requires a certain type of client. So our new motto is like, with social, speak to exactly who you're marketing to. So if my ideal client is XYZ, her family does this, she hangs out here. When I'm creating my content, that is who I need to be speaking to. And that is the type of person that I need to be connecting with. So, we're not going to be doing a lot of, I mean, I'm not this person anyway to do DIY stuff, but it's like that would not be my client because I don't do DIY. I'm the kind of person that it's like, I want it done to perfection, and I've done DIY and I'm horrible at it. So you'll never see me posting content of like, let's create this cool table and get these 3 products, and you could do it for $200 for you buy it for 2,000 online. That is not my client. And so, you got to really kind of speak to the client that you want that aligns with your aesthetic and kind of stick to that. And if you are like DIY queen and you can like bang this out and like you want to go in and you're like, I'm your designer and I can paint these walls and lime wash them to perfection, I will do that for you, and you love it, that's, you need to be talking to that person. And so I just think that that's really who you're going to attract, is like the person that you're talking to at the other end, and just kind of keep hammering that message in.
So that's the social media side of it. And do you produce all your content internally?
Yeah, so we do all of our content internally. Sometimes we'll, if we're doing a photo shoot, we'll hire a videographer. That's kind of been a big trend for us as of late, because there's just people are, wanting a lot more video footage. And so we'll hire a videographer to come and kind of take some video footage of our projects and things like that. And then now, even more so, we're starting to do like, face interviews, which it's interesting how there's a lot of talk in our industry about like, okay, I want to just design and I want to make cool places for people. And it's like, okay, now all of a sudden I'm a content creator and I'm your design BFF that you're connecting with. And it's just, that's how we're living. I mean, even with fashion, it's like, I'm not really shopping. I'm not like window shopping anymore at the mall. I'm like going to my favorite influencers and I'm like, okay, what did they pull today? Okay, that looks cool. I think I'd look good in that. And then I'm going to shop and try it based on their links, because they're doing all the work. They're curating my wardrobe for me so that I don't have to now spend my Saturday window shopping and then maybe I didn't find anything and I leave with nothing. It's the same with design. It's like you're connecting with people in their home, they're leaned back and they're kind of gaining ideas, and then you're serving them up ideas. It's just one other layer that designers now are kind of tasked with. And it's, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but it's just, unfortunately, it's like that's just what you have to do as part of your marketing strategy, is like kind of play in that content game.
So how do you fight the urge? AI has created two distinct outcroppings, creep and slop. And the creep side speaks to what you're saying now. It's like, well, I'm not a marketing company. I mean, I am a design firm. I don't want to create my own content, but you don't have a choice.
Mhm.
So the temptation is to go to, Nano Banana and all of the tools that are available, right? To say,
Mhm.
write this for me, create an image of that for me, create a video here, and then put things up. And you're not quality checking the way that an entertainment, a content company would. So maybe you miss a sixth finger or a book upside down or whatever. The other side of that is slop, that so much is just pushed out so fast that people
Yeah.
aren't checking it. How do you resist the urge to do that and produce good content that speaks to the firm's philosophy?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good question, because again, with the time, we're all limited on time, and AI has just really kind of fast tracked, which in a scary way is, you know, taking the replacement of even using your brain and like being creative. I mean, the idea of, I used to sit there for 30 minutes crafting like the perfect client email, and now I'm like a couple of sentences, I'm like, make this sound da 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 da, and then it kind of does this like beautifully crafted email that you're like, "Ah, that sounds amazing. I am, yes, I sound like great. Let's go." And now with marketing, it's like, I see all these different things that Nano Banana could do. Now the big one is Claude, where everyone's like, you have to be using Claude for XYZ. And it's overwhelming. And I know it's a necessity, but really, for me, you can tell the difference. Just the same thing as like, if you go to Restoration Hardware and you're like, I'll take room A, because you get swept away with like all the things when you walk in there. I even get swept away, but then you get out of there and you go look at someone's home that bought room A and you're like, oh, this looks weird. Like everything is the same color, the same tone, matchy matchy. It doesn't look cool. It doesn't look like a curated designed home. And it doesn't matter if you got everything at Restoration Hardware, or like if you got, go to like the nicest showroom and you're just like, you got to kind of curate the space with different things that you love. And I think AI is the same way. If you're using AI for everything, it doesn't look authentic. It doesn't look curated, and it doesn't look, I guess authentic is like the best word to use. You can tell. So even when we're doing, like we haven't really got to the point where, we'll use it in a way where we're like putting together color palettes and things like that in like a cool organized way. But even still, we're still like layering in our own mood boards. A lot of times we'll still make our own 3D renders. If it's quick, we'll do it in AI, but it looks like an AI render and it doesn't look like how you would want the space to look anyway. So that's still where your technical skills come into play, and properly creating a photorealistic 3D render versus like an AI generated one. It is a time saver. It's a cost saver as well, but you have to be very clear with clients that, hey, this is AI generated, and there's a couple things that are off, or it's not going to look like XYZ. You have to just like caveat, because you can get into some big trouble if a client thinks that it was going to be like that and then at the end of the day it wasn't. But it's like, to get AI or Nana Banana to get exactly how that railing dies into like the stairwell or whatever, it's impossible unless you make a your own 3D photorealistic rendering with software. So we'll use it, and we have been diving into more trainings of how we can properly use AI as a firm to be more efficient, and things of that nature. But I think it's the same thing as like if you're using quartz in a kitchen versus natural stone. It kind of looks the same, but like it'll never replace natural, like the authentic, real version of what you're trying to do. And I think it's like the same with marketing. An AI generated photo versus like, even something that you snapped on your iPhone and you're speaking to it, it just feels more authentic. You're getting an inside look into someone's camera roll versus like this computer generated asset that you're just then posting.
So you have the social media side,
Mhm.
which is really self generating and an ongoing part of the business. And then you have the third party. You have the outside marketing. So like an AD Pro, for example, what has
Mhm.
that done for you?
AD Pro is, a great resource to get recognized by a very esteemed, established brand. And I think for that, I think it gives you a lot of validity with your clients in um, your skill set, experience, and what you can offer. And I think like having that you know alignment is really good for validation of like where you are in your career. I think the same thing in being recognized in magazines, right? A lot of times if you're featured in House Beautiful, Traditional Home, all these different magazines, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a bunch of calls from clients to be like, oh, I saw you in this magazine. Which is, leads me to kind of like PR is a very different beast now too, in terms of like getting recognized and things like that. But I think having that validity to say like our work was featured in these esteemed magazines or these esteemed brands have recognized us, I think goes a long way with clients still. I think it's, kind of that stamp of approval.
It's interesting. It's different though, because, and I don't think this was confusing for you because of your background and where you came in, but I think a lot of designers, when they come into the business, are confused and don't really understand exposure and media. I don't think they understand the difference between earned and paid.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have value. It's interesting because you coming from media and I having a background in media, I can tell you there's always been there's a value attached to earned media
Mm-hmm.
because, oh, well, a publicist presented this or an editor picked that. And so there's a certain element of, I don't know if you want to call it authenticity. I don't think that's true. Um, because to be completely blunt with you, I don't think most media editors, the editors of magazines, I don't think that they know, again, don't send me emails, but I don't think they really know what, it's not that they don't know what they're talking about, but they don't really know the industries that they're in backwards and forwards because they don't have the time. They're thinking about producing a magazine that is this percentage edit, this percentage ads. This is a trend. We've got to cover this, and this is the celebrity designers project of that designer got this celebrity, so we've got to run it here. And then they kind of fill in everything else quickly because then you're on to the next issue. Whereas paid seems more, I think some people consider it more forced. I think it's more strategic because every business should have money for advertising.
Hmm.
You ask 100 designers and all of them will say, well, word of mouth is our primary. It's like, okay, well, you came from media, I came from media. Word of mouth doesn't exist without the original source of marketing or advertising or whatever it was that got your name out there in the first place. Things don't just happen by themselves. There has to be an impetus, right? There has to be a moment. So when you think about earned versus paid as it relates to the firm, as a firm owner, how do you think about that?
I think that's a hard one because I think our industry isn't that dialed into that level that we're used to for paid media and advertising. And a lot of times, like paid media and advertising with a business, it requires a large budget, right? In our minds. But now with Instagram and Google Ads and things like that, I think that's a new way for designers and including my firm to, or PR even. I mean, PR, it's like they're submitting your stuff, but you're paying somebody to submit your stuff. So that's a version of paid, even though it's like you may or may not get selected, which is a really hard pill to swallow. It's like, okay, let me pay this money and you may or may not get selected. But that's a version of paid. And I think, social was so great a couple of years ago because it was this momentum that everyone was getting where it's like if you shared someone and they shared your stuff and then you'd start to get your follower growth and like inquiries would come in. And now with the algorithm changes and everything, it's no longer the case. It's like built in a way where it's like you got to pay to play still in a certain element. And so I think we're still trying to kind of wrap our brains around, okay, what direction do we go to? But I think even the idea of like paying for photography, I mean, to get your project shot and videography is now part of that. And those other little mini snippets, and then getting a reel package together from like all these different people, that's all part of marketing. And then it's like after you pay all that money, then you don't really have a lot left to then now pay for ads to get that content out there. You're just like hoping that people will share it and people will like it and the algorithm will pick it up, and still kind of writing on that earned media. So it's a very interesting time. So unless you have like larger budgets where you can apply advertising dollars to like a Google ads, okay, like I'm going to spend this much on Google ads, but I mean sometimes like the photography package could be thousands and thousands of dollars at the end of the day. And then you're like, okay, cool, I have all this footage. Now two people are going to see it on Instagram. Awesome. And it's just like, it's so frustrating. It really is. Cause you're like, we worked so hard on this project. We want to get it shot. I have like this cool reel package. And then you're like, all right, awesome. 200 people saw the reel. And like, if you think about it, you're like, and you put 200 people in a room, you're like, that's a lot of people that saw my thing that I paid to put together. But at the end of the day, with just how massive social is, it's like 200 people is like nothing. So I try to still be grateful that I'm like, okay, even like those 200 people saw it, yay. But in the
Yeah,
really,
but wait a minute. But wait a minute. It's interesting to hear you say that
yeah.
because I remember when I first started out in radio, I was working for the Howard Stern show, and I remember our program director came in one day to talk to us. He's like, imagine that you had, if the average quarter hour was 1,500, imagine that you had 1,500 people in a stadium and you could talk to them for 60 seconds. That's the radio pitch, right?
Mhm.
That's the radio pitch. And if you think about it, then it's not a question of those people and the value of those people. and we're getting in the weeds here, and I appreciate the opportunity to do
Yeah.
that because I never get a chance to do this.
Yeah.
It's the conversion.
Yes.
And you compare it. So, like, comparatively speaking, I'll give you a couple of examples. Back to the AD Pro thing, that's paid. That comes out of marketing, right?
Hmm.
So then you have to determine, is it the perceived affiliation that you get by being associated with Arc Digest? Do clients come in from that and do they pay for themselves? And so what's the cost per acquisition? I wish more designers would think about that. The other thing is every almost every designer in the world loves to put in the first line of the bio award-winning interior designer. Well, if you're award winning, then you went into a contest. If you went into a contest, then you probably paid for that entry,
A bit.
which goes
Yes.
back to marketing as well. And then what happens if you don't win? Then you don't get your award winning. And a lot of designers will just keep entering until they get that one where they get an award and then they stop. But
Hmm.
charging to be on lists, charging to be in contests, charging to be, in a community like that. Now you have so many different choices to make. How do you evaluate that? And I think that, kind of that's the question is how do you decide of that marketing budget? Wasn't it Mark Twain who said, 50% of advertising works and 50% doesn't? And, you just, who knows which side, what 50% actually works? I totally butchered that quote, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So how do you evaluate? How do you process?
Well, that's a good question because there's so many of those contests that are coming up now, and you see like your colleagues and they're getting like awards, and you're like, oh, like we need to get our name out there and like showcase our stuff. So you kind of get like pulled into the
You get
cycle.
roped into it.
You do. But I think for us, we've been very careful on like where we're spending our dollars and if it makes sense or if we want to align with that, specific brand that is doing, that contest and then you have to like pay per submission. I think for us, like we'll definitely invest in local because we want to make sure that we're getting local clients and we service, everybody. We have projects everywhere in the United States, but if we could, stay in Austin, that's easier for us, right? So we invest in those areas. And so making sure we're getting to know our editors here in Austin, making sure that we're supporting them. So if they are having this contest, it's like supporting the design community. Because I mean, HGTV has a contest, House Pro has a contest, Sunset Magazine, everyone has a contest where they're showing the best of the best, but you're paying for each submission. So you got to really be smart about like, okay, where do we want to submit? Where do we feel like we have a good chance? Like the Red Lux Awards, like that would be a great one, that we would say like, okay, we would want to invest in it. But another designer might be like, that might not be the best fit for me. I really want to go in on these three that, really kind of stand out for me for whatever reason. So I think it's just really evaluating on, what your focus is and then kind of going in on that. But I think it definitely is there's just so many levers to pull. And then at the end of the day, it's like what's working, what is truly working. And I think for the majority of people, it's like Instagram, right? Instagram works really well in terms of getting leads. And then everyone is saying like, architects, builders, and referrals. And, referrals is basically like, how you really lead with client service, because that's how you're going to get that referral. And then really connecting with the architects and builders so that you're a trusted partner. But I think the advertising portion is just so muddy and watered down right now that it's hard to know where to put your money because then you're like, oh, I only have this much of the pie. And I know I need to like use it to get my portfolio pictures and videography. But then now I have it. Now, where do I put that other piece to get it out into the world? So,
So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because this is something that's absolutely fascinating to me too.
mhm,
If you look back, right, there was a whole new class of designers and creatives that came after 08, 09, after the Great Recession, right?
mhm,
It was so catastrophic financially for so many people that you had all these people who became bloggers and real estate agents and interior designers was a huge one. The bloggers have kind of gone away. The real estate agents, either you're good at what you do, like everything else, or you're not. And if you're not a good real estate agent, you're not gonna make it. But the designers was really interesting because when that crisis ended, you had people who were spending that time learning a craft, learning something. And then when the floodgates opened to housing, all of these designers started getting work. And what was interesting to see how then, many years later, these designers had kind of risen to the top of their game. They're solid professionals doing a great job now. And then the pandemic hits, and they're the ones who were like not phased by this.
No.
Many weren't. They were like, we're not panicking. Something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to break, but something's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, they're getting all this work. And designers I was talking to were flying all over the country and some over the around the world when they could to go do this. Others had picked up on the virtual design almost immediately.
Mhm.
Out of every catastrophe, out of every crisis comes opportunity. So you came out of a crisis 5 years ago.
Yes.
Now we're in another one, right?
Hmm.
So what did you learn from that one that you're using now to further the firm's exposure to grow the business?
I think it's more just even for myself being more conscious about where I'm spending my own money. It's how we're marketing to our specific clientele and what we're offering. So, obviously, like the way that we design would be, first, quote unquote luxury client. They want like, natural materials. They want like, you know, things that, are timeless and maintain their aesthetic over time. But then we also have, packages for people like me who, I want all those things too, but like maybe I could do a room or two. And then, we'll talk in a year and a half and you can come back and do the rest. And so as long as you're relating to people where they are and we have something for everybody, I think, and we, still don't have to like lower our costs or things like that because we're staying true to like our firm and our service and what we're providing. But if you're able to service a specific person and where they're at and what they can handle financially, then I feel like you can maintain your brand, your positioning, your pricing, and kind of get out unscathed into as we kind of like we're in this decline, and as we're creeping back up, you'll be unfazed because you're kind of staying true, but you're able to be nimble in that way of like who you're servicing. And maybe it's like, you're not, doing e-design anymore. We still do e-design where it's like, but we have boundaries and parameters. Like it has to be a 3-room minimum for us to do an e-design. We're not doing like your nursery through an e-design. It has to be you. So we put parameters and boundaries over it so that it's worth our time too. And I think that's like a good way to kind of look at it when you're in a decline.
I love that. And you know what we need to do is you and I need to meet up. I don't think it'll be at the fall round top because
Yeah.
I'll be in Santa Monica for the West Edge Design Fair. But I think maybe next spring
Yes, let's do
we
it.
have to meet up at round top and you can show me
We'll
around.
have, I will show you around. We'll have a great time. We'll go eat all the fun things, barbecue, get you a hat. You need a cowboy hat.
Love it. Love it. Perfect. That sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you for doing this, Christina. I appreciate
Thank
the
you
time.
so much. This was so fun.
Christina, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts. Thank you to my incredible partner sponsors, Pacific Sales, Kitchen and Home, TimberTech, James Hardy, and the Best Buy Company for their sponsorship of Convo by Design, which allows me to seek out sublime design stories from beyond the work itself and showcase unique personalities, chasing new ideas, and changing the way we think about design and architecture, and present it to you. So please give them an opportunity on your next project. By the way, you have heard me talking about Shelter Republic, and the community is growing. Do you want to be a part of it? If you are a designer, architect, maker, if you're in the industry and you want to be in the conversation, you can email me, convobydesign@outlook.com, message me on Instagram at convobydesign with an X, and I'll send you a membership link. Remember, it's free, but you must be invited. So please, let me hear from you. And at the same time, email me, message me where you would like to see the show broadcasting live and potential guests that you'd like to hear from. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, be well, stay focused and driven so you can rise above the chaos.